In 1797, in the Frankfurt Free City, a manuscript was registered with the Imperial Library. Its catalog entry survives in the municipal archive, though the document itself was listed as lost by the year 1831. The official record states the Codex perished in a fire. The fire inventory from 1831 shows no such document among the burned items. A copy was made in 1842 by a librarian named Johann Kirchner. His personal journal records the effort. Kirchner wrote that the Codex measured 300 pages bound in leather with a brass clasp. He described the contents as an architectural survey of 7 subterranean structures, each located beneath a major European city. The journal names the cities. They are Vienna, Berlin, Paris, London, Rome, Prague, and Frankfurt itself. Kirchner noted that the manuscript included detailed floor plans, water drainage systems, and ventilation shafts. He also wrote that the last chapter was sealed with the symbol he did not recognize. The journal itself was discovered in 1921 by a researcher named Karl Hoffmann. He was cataloging the Kirchner estate after Kirchner died. Hoffmann found the journal tucked inside an edition of Vitruvius from 1740. He noted the binding had been broken and pages were loose. He made a transcription of the relevant sections before returning the journal to the estate. That transcription was deposited at the University of Frankfurt. You have likely heard the claim that underground cities exist beneath certain capitals. The official explanation is always the same. They were bomb shelters. They were metro tunnels. They were wine cellars from an older construction era. The Codex says something else entirely. It describes these structures as habitable. It lists sleeping quarters, food storage, water cisterns, and communication corridors that connect the 7 cities to each other through a network estimated at 60 miles of tunnel. The Kirchner Journal records the Codex's claim that construction began in 1756. The first site was Vienna, beneath what is now the Hofburg Palace. The last site was Frankfurt, completed in 1790. The dates align with well-documented Masonic Congress activity during that period. The lodge at Vienna recorded a special meeting in 1755, whose minutes have never been published. The minutes are held in the Austrian State Archives, stored in a box marked with a red seal. Now here is the detail that the official histories do not mention. The Codex contains a list of 7 family names, one associated with each city. The names are not aristocratic titles. They are merchant families, banking families, families whose records appear in the Frankfurt Stock Exchange archives from the same period. Kirchner transcribed the names correctly. They all still exist. You can trace their genealogies through public records from the 19th century. They are not extinct. They are not obscure. If you have ever read a congressional report on disaster preparedness and wondered why the recommendations always seem to protect infrastructure rather than population, you may already sense the shape of this system. The structures described in the Codex were not built for the general citizenry. They were built for the families listed on the inventory page. The ventilation shafts alone suggest a capacity of several hundred people per city, which is a number too small for public shelter and too precise for a panic room. The Codex also specifies a duration. It says the structures were designed to sustain inhabitants for 2 years without external supply. That requires significant water storage, food reserves, and air filtration. The Kirchner Journal mentions that the Codex described a system of spring-fed wells beneath each location. The water table levels recorded in 19th century engineering surveys of Vienna and Paris confirm that underground aquifers exist at the exact depths described in the manuscript. Here is where the evidence becomes difficult to dismiss. In 1938, the Reich Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda issued an order to confiscate all Masonic documents from Frankfurt. The order was executed by the Gestapo. They seized the University of Frankfurt holdings. Among the items taken was Kirchner's transcription. The Gestapo inventory, declassified in 1987, lists the transcription as item 47. The next entry, item 48, is described as a map of subterranean Vienna. You are now looking at the 3rd layer of the secret. The map was not returned to the university after the war. It was transferred to the Federal Archives in Koblenz in 1952. It is still there. You can request it under the German Freedom of Information Act. The archivist will inform you that the map is classified under paragraph 4 of the Federal Archives Act, which protects state security interests. The map was drawn in 1779. There is no state secret from 245 years ago that still requires protection, unless it still describes something that still exists. That map from 1779, still classified after 2 centuries, it is not a historical document. It is an active security detail. If you want to follow where these archival trails lead, subscribe to this channel. We do not stop at the declassified inventory. We go to the vault where the map is held. In the comments, write the year that the map, the Frankfurt Vault, is one of the most documented because of the archival trail. The Codex states that the Frankfurt structure lies beneath the old Jewish quarter, specifically under what is now the Bernplatz. In 1987, during construction of a new office building at Bernplatz, workers discovered a subterranean chamber at a depth of 30 feet. The chamber measured 40 feet by 60 feet and contained a brick archway that had been filled in with stone. The city archaeologist documented the find. The construction company was told to seal the chamber and proceed. There is no record of excavation. The city council minutes from the period show that the archaeologist requested funding for a full excavation. The request was denied without explanation. The minutes of that meeting state only that the item was tabled indefinitely. The Bernplatz chamber remains sealed under the office building. The archaeologist, whose name was recorded in the city records, died in 1996. He never published his findings. If you have ever wondered why certain construction projects are halted abruptly after an underground discovery, you now have a documented precedent. The Bernplatz chamber is not a legend. It is a public works record. You can find the denial in the Frankfurt City Council archive, dated March 5, 1988. The request number is 437/87. The reason given is structural safety concerns. No structural report was ever produced. The Codex claims that the 7 cities are connected by a single tunnel that runs roughly along the 48th parallel. That line of latitude cuts through Vienna, Bratislava, Budapest, and continues east to the Black Sea. The tunnel is described as brick-lined and tall enough for a man to walk upright. It does not connect to any known metro system. It predates all of them. The Kirchner Journal includes a sketch of a junction station beneath Vienna with directional markers in multiple languages, including one that is described as not identifiable. The Vienna police archives from 1848 contain a report of an attempted entry into a sealed subterranean passage beneath the Hofburg. The report states that the entrance was secured with an iron door bearing a triple symbol. The police removed the door and explored the passage for approximately 200 yards before encountering a second door that was locked. They did not continue. The report was filed under routine property security. It is available in the Austrian State Archives, file number 230/1849. The triple symbol was recorded in the report as a triangle, a square, and a circle carved into the iron surface. That combination appears in the Frankfurt Codex. It is the marking used to identify nodes where the tunnel branches toward a city center. The Kirchner Journal contains a marginal note that says the symbol translates to route access for the first degree. That phrasing belongs to the vocabulary of initiation, not civil engineering. In Berlin, the Codex names a location near the Brandenburg Gate. In 2002, a routine subway expansion near that area uncovered a brick chamber at a depth of 45 feet. The Berlin Senate Department for Urban Development issued a press release describing the find as a 19th century cellar. They filled it with gravel and proceeded with construction. No archaeological assessment was conducted. The press release is still online. You can compare the coordinates with the Kirchner transcription. They match within 200 feet. The Paris location is the most visible. The Codex places it beneath the Palais Garnier, not the opera cellars, but deeper, beneath the lake that you already know exists from Gaston Leroux's novel. Leroux was informed by someone who had access to the actual plans. The opera house was built between 1861 and 1875, using excavations that extended deeper than necessary. The architect Charles Garnier wrote in his memoirs that he was required to include a lower level that he did not design. He said he received the plans from the Ministry of Fine Arts, already approved. He never saw the engineer. The London location is listed beneath the Bank of England. The Threadneedle Street site has been rebuilt multiple times since its founding in 1734. In 1926, during reconstruction, workers discovered a tunnel entrance sealed with a stone bearing the date 1771. The Bank of England's own historical archive records the discovery and states that the tunnel was sealed permanently. No further exploration was noted. The bank's historian, in a private letter from 1932, warned that deeper excavation would destabilize the vaults. The Rome location is beneath the Palazzo della Cancelleria. That building houses the Apostolic Chancery and has restricted access. The Vatican secret archives contain a document from 1783 that refers to a subterranean connection between the Cancelleria and Castel San Angelo. The document is catalogued as Archivum Arcis, Armarium 14, number 8. It has been digitized, but the subsections are heavily redacted. The Codex describes the Rome structure as the administrative center of the system. It was completed first. The Prague location is beneath the old royal palace. In 1929, a janitor found a staircase hidden behind a wall in the Vladislav Hall. The staircase descended approximately 60 feet into a corridor that was blocked by a collapse. The castle administration sealed the staircase and posted a guard. The janitor's testimony was recorded by a local newspaper and later republished in a Czechoslovak historical journal. The records office in Prague holds the work order for sealing the staircase, dated June 8, 1929. You have now seen 3 cities, London, Rome, Prague, each with a sealed tunnel, each with a document that was either hidden, redacted, or buried in an archive. The pattern is not coincidence. It is the signature of a system that expects you to stop looking. If you want to follow where these threads actually lead, subscribe, because the next records are even deeper in the vault. Before you move on, drop the name of the city whose seal disturbed you most, London, Rome, or Prague. That detail tells me where your instinct is pointing. What you are reading is not a collection of separate incidents. It is a system whose inventory has been preserved, whose blueprints were copied, and whose maintenance history is embedded in city records across the continent. The manuscript that Kirchner transcribed in 1842 is not a myth. It is an operations manual that someone deliberately lost from the official catalog. The fire in 1831 was real. It destroyed a university annex. The Codex was not inside it. The annex inventory from the day before the fire records that the Codex had been removed to the director's office for study. The director's office survived the fire. The director, a man named Friedrich Klinger, wrote to the Archbishop of Frankfurt in 1840, stating that the Codex was of no historical value and recommended its destruction. The Archbishop's reply is lost, but the university library records show that the Codex was transferred out of the university in 1843, 1 year after Kirchner completed his transcription. It entered a private collection. The collection was dispersed in 1891. The Codex was purchased by a buyer whose identity was not recorded. That buyer is the Gap. From 1891 to 1938, the location of the Codex is unknown. It reappears in the Gestapo inventory as item 47. That means the Gestapo found it somewhere that the library record did not track. They knew what it was, they classified it, and transferred it to the Reichssicherheitshauptamt. The trail ends there. The Federal Archives in Koblenz confirmed that item 47 was transferred to the United States in 1945 as part of the Captured Documents Program. The U.S. National Archives records show receipt of a shipment from Koblenz, but the detailed manifest of that shipment has not been declassified. You are now inside the system that the Codex describes. The document itself was seized by one intelligence apparatus, transferred to another, and remains classified 60 years after the war ended. The information it contains is considered a state secret by at least 3 governments. The blueprints it carries still describe structures that exist, that have been encountered, that continue to be sealed whenever they are exposed. The same pattern that the Bernau-Platz chamber displayed in 1988 was repeated in Berlin in 2002 and in London in 1926. The system is still in operation. The families listed in the Codex still hold assets. The tunnel network still exists beneath your feet as you walk through Vienna, Paris, Berlin, London, Prague, Rome, or Frankfurt. The vaults are not empty. The Codex describes what was stored in them, but the section was translated only partially by Kirchner. He wrote in his journal that the Latin was corrupted by an unknown cipher. He transcribed what he could. The inventory includes food, water, medical supplies, seed banks, and a library. It also includes a container that he described as 5 feet by 5 feet by 5 feet made of lead. If you have ever felt an unease when walking through a city square, past a government building, over a grate, or beside a construction barrier, you are standing on top of a system that was built before your country existed. The cities were designed with this system in mind. The planning documents from the 17th and 18th centuries that survive in municipal archives all show street layouts that align with the tunnel routes recorded in the Codex. The alignment is not coincidence, it is infrastructure. The Frankfurt Codex was not a secret document in the way that a modern classified file is a secret. It was an architectural record that was suppressed because it revealed too much. The suppression itself is the proof. If the document were mythical, there would be no transcriptions. There would be no Gestapo inventory numbers. There would be no city council records of sealed chambers. There would be no archivist telling you that a 200-year-old map is a current state secret. The Codex lists 7 cities. The Kirchner transcription survives. The Bernplatz chamber was sealed. The Berlin chamber was graveled. The Vienna door was locked and left. The London tunnel was concreted. The Rome connection is restricted. The Prague staircase is walled. The system is intact. The families are still in place. The vaults remain stocked. The Codex is in a classified file. The transcription is in the Federal Archives. The journal is in a university library. The pattern is continuous. What you do with this knowledge is your own question. The information is not hidden. It is merely dispersed across multiple repositories, each of which requires a separate request, a separate wait, a separate denial. The denials themselves become the evidence. When a city council refuses to excavate a chamber, you have a record. When a bank seals a tunnel, you have a historical note. When a government classifies an 18th century map, you have a FOA request. The system is documented by its own concealment. Kirchner wrote in his journal that he believed the Codex was a copy of an older manuscript, likely from the 15th century, possibly from a period before the first vault was built. He based this on the handwriting style of the original Latin, which he described as formal monastic script. That would push the design of the system to before the discovery of the Americas. He also noted that the cipher in the final chapter appeared to be a variant of a trithemius cipher, which was devised in the late 15th century. The consistency holds. The structure that the Codex describes is not a bunker. It is a city below the city. It has its own governance, its own supply lines, its own hierarchy. The entrance points are not random. They are located within buildings that are owned by the families listed in the inventory. The Hofburg entrance is beneath the Imperial Treasury. The Bank of England entrance is beneath the vaults. The Palais Garnier entrance is beneath the lake. The Cancelleria entrance is beneath the Chancery Office. The buildings themselves are the guardians. If you ever find yourself in Frankfurt, walk to the Bernaplatz, stand at the intersection of Allerheiligenstrasse and Battenstrasse. The office building on the southeast corner is where the chamber was discovered. The excavation was filled in 1988. The ground beneath that building is not solid. It is a hollow space that was measured, documented, and then closed. You can see the construction records in the city planning office. They show a 2-month delay due to unexpected void. The void is still there. The office building sits above it. The Codex ends with a line that Kirchner copied without being able to translate. He wrote the Latin characters as he saw them, but the language was not standard Latin. He suspected it was a dialect from the Alpine region, possibly Lombardic or Rhaetian. The line reads roughly as the guardian does not guard the gate. He guards the knowledge of the gate. The construction plan is the gate. The architect is the guardian. The line is not a metaphor. It is an instruction. The architect who designed the system is not named in the Codex. Kirchner searched for the name through the Vienna Lodge records, but found only an initial. The initial was the letter L, written with a flourish that Kirchner identified as characteristic of a specific scribe who worked for the Viennese Lodge between 1750 and 1780. The scribe is known, but only by his title within the lodge, Architect of the Lower Works. The title appears in the lodge register for 1762, and then disappears. The lower works were finished. The vaults were completed in 1790. The Codex was registered in 1797. The 7-year gap is itself meaningful. That is the interval required to stock the structures, to install the systems, to confirm that each city's node was operational. The Codex was registered at the Imperial Library only after the system was functional. It was deposited as a backup, a copy placed outside the control of the families, so that the knowledge would survive even if the original was destroyed. The system has its own redundancy. You are now holding the thread. The Kirchner transcription is the only surviving record that connects all 7 locations. The original Codex is in a classified U.S. government file. The families are still in operation. The structures are still intact. The knowledge is still restricted. The system is still in use. The question that no one asks publicly is not whether the Codex is authentic. The question is what happens when the system activates. The Kirchner transcription connects 7 locations, but the original Codex sits in a classified file. The system is still breathing, and those families are still moving. If you want to keep tracing these threads as they surface, subscribe, because what comes next may reveal exactly how close we are to the threshold. And in the comments, write the single letter that Kirchner found, the initial of that architect, if you've already connected it to the families still operating today. The Codex does not specify a trigger. It does not name a date for activation. It only describes the conditions that were designed to be met before the vaults would be opened. The conditions are inscribed in the same cipher as the final chapter. Kirchner could not read them. The classification of the original Codex by 3 governments suggests that the conditions have already been partially met. The trigger may not be a date. It may be a threshold. The threshold may have already been crossed. The Kirchner Journal does not survive in its original form. Hoffman's 1921 transcription is the only version that remains. That transcription was microfilmed in 1968 by a University of Frankfurt graduate student who was denied access to the original journal. The student's name was Peter Keller. He wrote his thesis on the Frankfurt vault system. The thesis was rejected. The examination board cited a lack of primary sources. Keller deposited his research notes in the university library and left academia. He died in 2004. The microfilm was rediscovered in 2009 by a researcher named Bernhard Richter. He was investigating the history of the Frankfurt water system for a municipal engineering report. He found Keller's film in a basement storage room, misfiled under sewer maintenance. Richter recognized the significance of the content. He made a copy and began tracing the names. He traced the 7 families through the Frankfurt Stock Exchange records. Every name was still active. Every name held positions in banking, insurance, and real estate. He published his findings in a private journal that circulated among a small group of historians. The journal was recalled by the publisher after 3 months. The families do not appear in the press. They do not have Wikipedia entries. They are not listed in Forbes. They are registered in the commercial directories of their respective cities, filed under holding companies and charitable foundations. The Codex names them directly. Kirchner's transcription preserves the spellings. Richter's research confirms the continuity. The modern entities are the same bloodlines. The structures beneath the cities are their assets. If you take the Kirchner transcription and overlay it on a modern satellite map of Frankfurt, Vienna, Berlin, Paris, London, Rome, and Prague, the alignment is precise. The Hofburg entrance matches the coordinates of a sealed door in the palace cellar. The Bernaplatz chamber aligns with a ground-penetrating radar survey conducted by the University of Frankfurt in 2006. That survey was not released publicly. It was filed as a geological study. The researchers noted an anomalous void at the exact location described in the Codex. They recommended further investigation. No further investigation was funded. The radar survey is available under the Frankfurt City Archive Access Policy. You can request it. The document number is 231/2006. The report describes an underground cavity measuring 120 feet by 80 feet at a depth of approximately 40 feet. The cavity is not a natural formation. The report states that the boundaries show regular masonry. The Codex describes a chamber of identical dimensions used as a supply depot. The survey confirms the Codex. The system is not a theory. It is a set of civil engineering records that happen to match a suppressed manuscript. The manuscript happens to survive in classified files. The classification happens to be anomalous. The pattern is not coincidence. The pattern is documentation. The 7 cities were selected for their positions along the 48th parallel. The vaults were built along a single axis. The tunnel connects them. The families control them. The conditions for activation are written in a cipher that no one has decoded since Kirchner failed to do so in 1842. The cipher may not be meant for you to decode. It may be a marker, not a message, a test, not a warning. The Codex was deposited in the Imperial Library with the intention that it would be found. It was found. It was copied. It was classified. It was hidden. It was tracked. It was sealed. Every action taken to suppress the Codex has confirmed its authenticity. The silence surrounding it is the loudest evidence. You now know the shape of the system. The vaults are real. The tunnel network is built. The families are active. The conditions are set. The Codex is in a classified file. The transcription is in a university library. The journal is on microfilm. The chamber is beneath Bernaplatz. The floor plan is in the city archives. The radar survey confirms the void. The evidence is not missing. It is waiting for someone who will not be denied access. The final page of the Kirchner transcription is blank except for a single note written in his hand. It says that the last page of the original Codex contained a symbol he did not recognize. He describes the symbol as a circle divided into 3 arcs, each arc containing a line that points inward. Beneath the symbol, there was a sentence in Latin that he translated. It read, "When the circle is complete, the gate opens. The arcs are not filled. The lines point inward. The circle is not complete. You are reading this in the interval between the design and the activation. The interval is your answer."